evening. Today is Monday, October 3rd. Welcome on a Monday evening versus a Wednesday evening. It is 6:31 and I am calling the Northborough School Committee to order. Let's start with audience sharing. Would anybody like to share? Anything? No? All right.
So I just have a brief acknowledgement. I just want to acknowledge the passing of an Algonquin student, John Meany, and just want to share our sincerest condolences to the Meany family. I know Melican in Algonquin Regional High School has reached out to the family and provided as much support as possible. But again, our thoughts and prayers go with the family. And it's one of the most difficult things that can happen as a parent is the loss of a child. And I know it's been a really challenging time at the middle school and high school, and I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd also like to acknowledge with sadness and deep sympathy the passing of a former teacher from Peasley School, and that is Eileen Tupper. And she was definitely a great force. Both my kids were very fortunate to have her as a teacher. And I think when we called head teachers, if the principal was out of the building, she would take over if any administrative duties had to be taken place. And I think that anybody who goes through any of our schools and has teachers, they make such an impact on their lives. And I'm sure that the students that had her feel that they're very fortunate, as with all the students, with any of our teachers in any of our schools. So I just like to acknowledge her dedication and service to our community.
With that, with no other audience sharing, we'll go on to new business with the legislative update.
Sure. So the first update is around procurement. So Keith and Becky were excited to learn that the procurement thresholds have increased for districts from 50,000 to 100,000, and that requires us a new quotation threshold for school districts have been increased from 10,000 to more than $100,000, and that gives us more flexibility in terms of procuring supplies, goods, and services without having to create more bureaucracy, more paperwork. So that goes into effect on November 25th. And Becky, I'm not sure, or Keith, I'm not sure if there are any comments you would like around the change.
No, we're just excited about it because right now it does seem like a lot of work, I'm sure, to put together an invitation for bids. And so raising that threshold, especially with the way that inflation is right now, it seems like we were going out for bids for many of our services and our goods. So
the next update really is around students who attend schools out of district. So there are a number of students who require specialized instruction and education that we cannot provide in district. We did receive communication that those out of district rates are going to increase by 14% in fiscal year 24. So we will be advocating and seeking out from our legislative delegation support to make sure that the increase is something that school districts across the Commonwealth can sustain. 14% increases is not anything we've seen in over a decade, and it's something we're very concerned about moving forward.
You said that's to go into effect in
fiscal year 24, so any placements, out-of-district placements for students across the Commonwealth, those are anticipated to increase by 14%.
For FY24.
FY24.
And do we currently have an estimate of what that increase will be for?
Yeah, so we've done some initial calculations. It's a little under $300,000 for
additional.
And is that something that if we don't get the legislation worked out before that happens, that's something that we're then going to have to come out of our operational budget?
Yeah, it's our requirement.
Be our responsibility.
And Kelly and Greg, would it be a good idea to write a letter to our legislators? I know that the town board will be meeting with our legislation, but they usually takes like in the wintertime or something, or early spring. So is there some way we could formulate a letter and have it signed by all of us?
Yeah, I think that there's some advocacy that's happening behind the scenes, so we'll definitely seek out letters and other ways to communicate our concern about the price increase.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta believe it's all districts. It's not, we're not unique.
And those are the two legislative updates.
All right, school improvement plans.
So just a quick update in context. So last year was the first year that our principals implemented their 3-year school improvement plans. So this evening, they're going to share last year's progress and also share their action plans for 22-23. So this evening, we have our 3 elementary principals, 4, I didn't see you, sorry, Mary, and Michelle Carr, our middle school principal, who will present. So we'll start with elementary and then shift to middle school.
No, I've asked for a 2-hour presentation. You ready for that? All right.
You're up.
I got chosen to start since I didn't have a lot to do with creating the school improvement plans last year. So I've learned a lot from these 3 already about where we are and what we've done in the past, but I'm going to let them share about the specific goals. But I just wanted to kick us off by talking about how obviously our school improvement plan is in line with the district improvement plan, with the district mission statement of educate, inspire, and challenge. And then also with our core values of integrity, empathy, inclusivity, equity, perseverance, and respect. And like Greg said, we're going to give an update on what we've done over the last year with those action steps. I say we, but what they've done, and in our plan for what we're going to focus on this upcoming school year.
So I'm going to start with the Empowering Learners goal. So the goal is to provide opportunities for students and educators to use technology to solve problems, learn, and communicate. So this previous year, we provided opportunities to unpack the digital computer literacy skills or standards, first with administrators and then educators. The work has been led by Julie Doyle, the Director of Instructional Technology, and the digital learning team of instructional specialists. So last year, we also provided the digital literacy work with administrators. So we did that first, and then administrators rolled it out in their schools with their teachers. And it really was to get people comfortable with what the standards were, as well as start to think about where they were already being implemented, and to think about future ways that we could implement those standards in the classroom. So we explored and designed digital computer literacy standards with the digital leadership. And they found ways where we were already implementing it, but then worked hard to identify some power standards that we would work on this year. So I have some pictures that I'd like to just highlight today. A lot of these have to do with the coding standards that have been implemented, but they're being implemented in a variety of ways in each of the schools. So you'll see the middle quilt is a coding design geometric quilt where kids come up with the coding designs, they enter it into the computer, and then they print out what the outcome is, and then they put them together as a group of students in art class. And then the others, we have a couple of competency-based photos. So the top left is our library media specialists are implementing lessons to build literacy skills as well as coding and problem solving and computational thinking. We also have our fundamentals that are happening in 2nd and 3rd grade. So you'll see the top left and the top right are the fundamental classes. And then we have a gingerbread activity on your left. And then during the month of code, we have a variety of things that the schools have been working on. So everyone has a little bit of a different nuance in their buildings, but then we share those things with colleagues. You'll see that kids are creating QR codes in their classrooms. This one specifically was happening in a 4th grade class where they were doing the state fair, and they, in their state fair, they highlight like landmarks in the states, and that QR code takes you right to the landmark, and then you can learn about the landmark. So as we move toward next year, we are working to identify the next group of standards that we want to dive into across the content areas. We have, we're providing opportunities with the use of an educator toolbox. Julie Doyle and her team have built this fantastic web page that has links for teachers to explore and utilize in their classrooms across the grade levels. It has lesson ideas, activities, explanations of the standards, as well as applications in real-life settings for kids to practice. There's also a link to STEM careers, so kids can see what this kind of knowledge base will lead to them in the future. So the educators will explore that this year, and then they will implement some of the model lessons that were created by the team last year, and then add to those bank of lessons to share across the schools with each other. The school media specialists will continue to do some digital literacy implementation, as well as classroom teachers with the instructional support specialists this year. We'll be including the additional teacher lessons on this the digital toolbox. We hope to continue with our professional development opportunities through the toolbox, as well as we begin on November 8th with some opportunities for teachers to learn how to use different tools.
So I'm going to speak to our second goal, which is under equity of opportunities. The goal itself is to foster culturally responsive and inclusive classroom communities and school environments that provide equal access to learning for all students and meet their individual needs. So we worked a lot on this goal across all 4 of our schools last year in collaboration with many folks in our district that are in leadership positions in order to dive into this work. So as a NASA leadership team, we started the work with really unpacking and looking at unconscious bias and equity. And then from there, through our shared learning experiences, bringing that work to our staff and our staff meetings, and really unpacking that with our staff. And I'll speak to that in a few moments about what that work will look like and continue with this school year. We also spent a lot of time in structured opportunities in our PLCs and in our staff meetings, evaluating curriculum resources to ensure that diverse voices and perspectives and experiences were represented. So a lot of our classroom teachers were looking at their own classroom libraries. Our library media specialists were looking at the libraries and looking at what are we missing, what don't we have, and how can we provide for that. And additionally, looking at our units of study and looking to where we need to include those resources. So we've done a lot of work with that this past year. And then after that, another large component of our work in conjunction with Megan Kelty, our ELA coordinator, and our reading specialist, was the implementation of a K-2 literacy screener. And through their leadership in each of our buildings, we were able to screen our students and looking at those early literacy skills and better understanding each of the needs of our learners in an in-depth manner. And then from there, using tools, resources, and instructional strategies to then plan to meet the needs of those students. So that was a great deal of work was spent on that, and I think what we saw was that through very careful data analysis and planning, we were able to provide students with what they needed in small group settings, individual and in the whole classroom environment, and then progress monitor them to look at, is what we're doing effective, and how do we need to make adjustments? And then last year in grades 3 through 5, we looked at the math screener and the math diagnostic assessment, and we administered that in the spring. So we're going to be looking at that data closely this year in grade 3 through 5 PLC staff meetings times in order to look at the math aspect for students in those grades. So here's some pictures, under equity of opportunity across all of our schools, and really valuing and celebrating our students and their backgrounds and their experiences, and bringing those voices into the work that we do every day with our students. That's the picture up in the left. It's a bulletin board from one of the classrooms that really looked at each of the learners in the classroom and celebrated them. And that was a bulletin board that represents each of them. The middle picture, in the middle there, is a math lesson in a first grade classroom last year, and really digging down to having really thoughtful mathematical discussions with even our youngest learners, and using that rich math vocabulary to have them share and explain their thinking. And then a continuation of our windows and mirrors work with our libraries, and looking at what's in our classroom libraries and how do students see themselves and how they're represented. The lower left is a kindergarten classroom and the Heggerty curriculum being implemented, which is really teaching students through repetition. It's very strategic, lots of full body movements to help them hear the letter names, the letter sounds, and that group of students could teach that Heggerty lesson by the end of the year. So that was a really big highlight every day. They really enjoyed that. And they made great progress across our schools using that curriculum. And then pictures of students with the diverse library options and reading together some of those books that we've now included in our libraries. And then looking ahead, this year our focus with the literacy data and the math data is to really dig down and dig deep with it. We are now working with our educators on really pinpointing specific areas to drill down and say, what does this data tell us? What are the options for instructional pathways with our students? And what do those researched, vetted tools look like to support our students as they grow against their own baselines? So in our PLCs this year, there's a lot of collaborative data sharing. There's a lot of collaborative planning. We've invited other support professionals to common planning times to also support the work and really be thinking about from a multi-pronged approach where our ELD teachers, for example, are coming and saying, when you're working on this topic in math, this is how you can support students with a lens on math vocabulary and how you can implement really sound strategies to help support their learning and understanding. We're also going to be using a common district rubric to assess our literature and curriculum resources to check for that cultural competence. So that's new for us this year that we're going to be starting to do some work with our classroom teachers, librarians, and other specialists. And also in November, all of the elementary staff members are going to be participating in anti-bias foundational training through the Anti-Defamation League. So this is also going to continue to grow our capacity as leaders and educators that work with children to better understand bias and support our students in the classrooms.
Is that a PD day?
Yes, it's going to be November 8th PD Day.
Okay, lucky number 3. This falls under healthy and balanced learners. Excuse me. And our goal is to develop and implement a coherent and systematic approach to social and emotional learning. Through our ongoing work in this area, we strive for all of our students to be successful, which means supporting their whole development. We all know excelling academically is important, but students also need skills to take on learning challenges, to make good decisions, manage their emotions, as well as to get along with others. Our work in this area has included developing staff capacity for cultivating their own social, emotional, and cultural competence in order to model social emotional learning and to build collaborative, trusting relationships with the students. In the past, with Dr. Jennifer Lipton O'Connor's guidance, we worked to help staff develop a shared understanding of the essential components of the CASEL framework for social emotional learning. CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, envisions all students and adults as self-aware, caring, responsible, engaged, and lifelong learners who work together to achieve their goals and create a more inclusive, just world. Is there a picture? Oh, okay. So here are just a couple of things that we focused on in the past and what we'll be looking at in the future. So we see students and staff engaged in learning, social emotional learning. So this is a group of first graders in the classroom in a morning meeting, practicing some skills. We have staff working on the CASTLE competencies in a professional development day. That's the CASTLE framework, the circle. And we have a therapy dog, Toby, who is housed at Lincoln Street School with Justin Lowwater, and some work that we've done with mindfulness and work that we'll be continuing to do with the Boston versus Bullies, which I'll speak to in a moment. This year, each of the elementary schools has dedicated time in the daily schedule to continue with the implementation of research-based social and emotional learning programs. Learn how to recognize, report, and refuse bullying. As students master these crucial skills, educators and school staff will learn to recognize and respond appropriately. We have been fortunate enough to expand the inclusion of certified therapy dogs into our school, like Toby. We currently have 5 certified therapy dogs in the district, 3 of which are helping out in the Northborough schools. Principal Carb has been assisting staff members in certifying their dogs through Bright Spot Therapy Dogs. And each of our therapy dogs have become bright spots for our students and staff. And we are excited to share that additional staff members are currently going through the training with their dogs at this time. Last year, we implemented a social emotional screener, and we will continue with the analysis of the data provided to us through the screener to provide students with the necessary support to improve their social emotional health. This is ongoing through our professional learning communities and our staff meeting time as well. Social emotional learning remains at the forefront of the district's priorities, policies, and practices, which allows us to foster caring and supportive environments and to promote all students' social, emotional, and academic growth. We remain excited about our work in this area and look forward to sharing more with you about it in the future.
And then finally, this year we've been lucky enough in Northborough to have some added stipended positions for our teachers. So we have new leadership teams that we're using where we have our head teachers and also 4 other staff members in the building, along with the principal, that we're meeting bi-weekly to just work on things as a building. And so one of our goals, we thought we should add something that encompassed the work we're doing there. And so our goal is to use these teams to help move the buildings forward in those other 3 areas that we've already discussed. And so we're excited about having those, and we've all started our teams, and we're going to continue to use them throughout the school year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Since I've been serving on this board, the evolution of the school improvement plans is, you're the epitome of it. This is wonderful. And, hats off to the administration to give you the guidance to it, and also seeing that each of you in your school improvement plans are keeping this very vital. The Vision 2026, our strategic plan going all the way to the year 2026, which is educate, inspire, and challenge. And everything that you talked about tonight definitely hit upon each of those levels. And I think just as much as we're pulling for cooperative and collaborative among our students, I think you're modeling it at a top level and giving it down. So I would just like to know though, but how do you guys get together? I mean, you're so busy during the day. I mean, do you do this from 6 to 8 or 9 o'clock at night, collaborating together, or do you do Zoom calls? I mean, it's fantastic to see the connection. I mean, we do have, you know, some students that cannot go to their neighborhood schools, do go to other schools, but I can see how if at the end of a school year, they want to transition back, and if there is room to go to their neighborhood school in their town, on their streets, they can do so, and it would be such a smooth transition to go through it. And it's such a rich, what you're doing is just absolutely fantastic. And, you know, what you hit upon was, like in all these goals, you talk about people working together, students working together. You talked about in technology, you're connecting even. You had the goal number 1 into art, into literacy. I saw the art there, which was fantastic. And then goal number 2, you brought in the math screeners in the spring and even in the one in the literacy in the fall. My question for that is, why do you wait to do the math screening in the fall, in the spring, when you also have MCAS looming before you?
So we did it both at the beginning of the year and the end of the year last year, but we're utilizing the data for the end of the year as a look back to the current students. So if you have a 3rd grade class, you can now look to see how they did on the 2nd grade diagnostics, so that as you're teaching and giving the new diagnostic tool, you can compare that. And so I think the original goal of the collecting of the data was for longitudinal data, so that we could see patterns and trends among our kids instead of just, how they performed in a given grade level.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does that interfere with the MCAS testing, or because you're so busy in the spring?
Well, not really, because I think we waited until after that was over to do the screener.
Okay.
But the standardized testing is very different. It doesn't compare, only because there are, grade level standards in the diagnostic tool that are really kind of on grade level, whereas the MCAS does a variety of band, and it's very standards based and not skill based.
Okay. And on the K-2 literacy screener, does that go to all students, or is that ones that have been targeted?
Yes, that's for everybody. Yep.
Everybody?
Everybody. So all students are screened, and then our teams, we all sit down together, we look at that data. And, to what Mary just spoke of, we're able to look back at last year's data as well, to look at longitudinally how our students are progressing. Mm-hmm. So we did that in our data team meetings the past several weeks, as we looked at last year's, we looked at the most current data to look at where's progress been made, where are the opportunities to continue to further the work with students. And so teachers got to look at their new students this year and look at the data from last year to see the progression.
Do the homeroom teachers, classroom teachers, do they administer it, or does that go to the reading specialist?
So the reading specialist led the efforts last year, and it was a, I do, we do, you do model. So they modeled and coached, and then teachers have gradually taken that over with the support of the reading specialist. So it's definitely been a collaborative effort.
Okay, so do they have a time to be training with Megan? Because sometimes it can be so subjective on responses. One teacher may be a little bit harder of a evaluator than another one, just to make it consistent.
Yeah, there was a lot of training that went into it with the teachers, with Megan Kelty training, working with our reading specialist, and our reading specialist and Megan working with our classroom teachers for administration. So that was that coaching and modeling piece that our teachers could see that, had the opportunity to ask questions, had someone there to help guide them. And we continued that into this year, but it's definitely been a larger release to the teachers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love all this data collection. My former principal, who is now the superintendent in schools, taught us how to do about the data and how to review it and to look at it 4 times during the year and to keep it current. It wasn't just an assessment and put it on, in a drawer. It was a viable tool to use. So I am really glad to see about this data and how live it is. And my last question was on goal number 3. If you could just give a little introduction on what is Boston versus bullying, and I'm glad to see we have an anti-bullying program in the schools, and I think it's very important.
So Boston versus Bullies was a program that we brought to the schools right before the pandemic, and then we were unable to bring it back. So it's obviously it's based out of Massachusetts, hence the name Boston versus Bullies, and it really uses local positive role models from a variety of the Boston sports teams to talk to the students through interactive videos. The presenter shows to the students, what does bullying look and sound like? What are the strategies that you can use when you're presented or part of situations where there's, unkind comments being made or something's happening that doesn't look right, sound right, or feel right, and gives them a toolbox of strategies. So there's a presenter that comes to our schools and works with each grade level through a presentation style, but then there's interactive video, and they leave us with resources. And it really aligns to our second step curriculum, so teachers have the opportunity to keep carrying the learning forward after they're done with their presentation and their work with us. So they give us everything on a drive that we can access, and there's a wealth of resources.
And did Jennifer say that is that the program that's going to be at the professional development? Was that the program or no?
No, it's the Anti-Defamation League.
Anti-defamation,
Yeah.
which is another wonderful thing. Thank you so much. Thank you again, and hats off to you that you're all working collaboratively together. And this has to be the best of that I've seen in the school improvement plan. So thank you very much for all your hard work and dedication.
I have 3 quick things.
Yep.
First, the Boston, since this was the last, the Boston versus Bullies. Are parents ever able to access some of that stuff? Because some of that stuff I feel like parents could really use the help of some of those videos, especially how to deal with, like, I know my daughter will come home and she'll be, telling me about a situation, and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, but that would be helpful for parents, can access some of that stuff, I think it would be cool.
And I think in our action plan, we also do have some of our other curriculums that we're hoping to share with parents this year as well, the social thinking curriculums and the second step, so that teachers or parents understand the language that we're using with kids, so that is in our action plan.
I think it's great too, just for even like talking points, because I know being a preschool teacher, like parents, how was your day? Good, bad,
Right.
But if you give the parents like, okay, well, we painted this today, then the parents are like, oh, did you like painting with it? And then they can like open the dialogue that we want, so.
I think Second Step offers, homework, but we're trying
Not
to,
good.
it's not about completing a worksheet,
Right.
it's about having, to your point, the conversation, the dialogue. And so I think in our newsletters and communications, that's an area that we want to grow in and put out there. We were working on this week, and here's a conversation you can have at home, or a skill that was taught.
Definitely.
They just add to that too, so Mary Ellen Duggan and Jennifer Lipton O'Connor also are talking about what parent workshops that we can provide that would help parents gain the tools, and I think one of those is how to support students around relationships, peer relationships, and when it's challenging, and when a child is bullied. So that's something that we're hoping to move forward as well, and we can connect it back to Boston Bullies and Second Step and some of the language we're using inside our schools.
Because I think there's such a fine line between bullying and unkindness, I guess is the word, and of course, your parents will say, oh my God, my kid's being bullied, but there might not be, and then vice versa. You think, oh, they're just being unkind, but it's like, oh no, they're being bullied, they're being, so I think education for all of us would be helpful. The second question I had was going back to the literacy for K through 2 and the math for 3-5. I know we've talked about it in previous times, but so why is it just K2 and why is it 3-5? And are we going to be eventually screening both all in years to come?
Yeah, so I can start with math. So I think what happened last year was in our PLCs, we looked at the data but we included the kids in the collection of the data. But the data was a focus of discussions. So kids had those diagnostic assessments in math, but we didn't put it on our goals, but we are doing it.
Kids meaning for math, the K
Yes,
through 2.
yes.
They had it, they just weren't. Okay.
Right, so the
it's
two
not
focus
analytic.
areas so that we could put our resources with each of those groups. We decided to focus in on the math for 3 through 5 and the literacy in the K2, but we were still having those conversations. It just wasn't formally happening.
And with literacy, that has moved into 3 to 5 this year with the screeners. So the model this year is that the literacy specialists were the ones who went into those classrooms, conducted the screenings, modeled the screenings, and we are either in the process or have had the data shares with those teachers to look at that data as well. So they're in the next layer, the next step of the work.
Okay. And then my last thing was on the school improvement plans, school council. So I noticed that it looks like everybody's full, except it looks like Lincoln Street's got some openings. So is there a way for teachers and parents to apply for that, or how does that go about?
So that's been posted in my weekly parent update and staff update for the past few weeks. So I'm now reaching out directly to people to try to bring them on board. I think I have a few people who have agreed to do it, but it wasn't formalized for that plan.
So just a couple comments. First, I think that the cooperation, the collegiality is evident in this presentation. So we're very fortunate as a district to have 4 very talented principals, and we're very excited to welcome John. He's been a nice addition.
They're great to work with.
I think it's important to note that although we have a strategic plan that guides our work and that each school has its own school improvement plan that aligns common outcomes for students, that each school has its own unique culture and climate, that we have fixed outcomes for students, and no matter if your child attends Lincoln or Z, when they finish first grade, those common outcomes can be expected by all parents, no matter what elementary school. But there are some things that are unique about each school in terms of events and activities, and I think that's something that's really important, that although this is a common presentation, there are some uniqueness to each school that we need to celebrate and honor as well as we move forward.
Which also is principal reports. Do you guys want to do your principal reports while you're here, or do you not have anything to report on?
We don't have anything, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
I just don't know if you had any updates or anything.
I'm coming to the next one, so I'll have lots to share.
Mhm.
October will be a very busy month, so
Mhm.
I'll be happy to share out.
Great.
But overall, things are going well. It was a smooth start for us. We had full staff. We're still hiring a little bit in pockets. It wasn't easy, but I think we were all able to start the year, and I think we're certainly up and running, and the kids have adjusted really nicely. Staff was very happy coming back to school and getting the year started, so it's been a very positive opening for us.
I'd just like to thank you also for welcoming us as school committee members into your buildings for back-to-school night. John had to run off more. 2 times he had to go to the syrup machine to hand out the papers, but it was just nice to see the interaction. I was only able to go to Z School, but, the nurse was there and just welcoming everybody. And, the connections even with kids that are now in the middle school came back. And it was great to, meet our constituents, the community members, but it was great. So I hope that it was a great night for you, and I hope we didn't interrupt too much of what was going on, except I asked more Xeroxing. So thank you very much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Principal Clark?
So I think you will see some common themes and some common language to what the elementary folks just presented. And one of the nice things about our school improvement plans, they are so connected to the district strategic plan that we have worked really closely with Trotter in terms of our plan, as well as Algonquin, and looking at sort of progress and where we need to head. So we have 5 goals in our school improvement plan. So the first goal was similar to the elementary school's goal, and it's around the DLCS power standards. So we finished year 1 of this goal, and we are in good shape, but we definitely have some work to do. So the progress that we made last year, some of the highlights around the progress includes inventorying where DLCS standards are currently being met and where students are exposed to those standards. Once the inventory was done, the results were shared with all faculty and staff, and we were able to identify some areas where we could seamlessly integrate some of the DLCS standards. So some of that work happened last year. Our instructional tech specialist also collaborated specifically with certain teachers when they asked her to. She did teach all students about copyright laws, for example, so she did some direct instruction in classrooms as well as some co-teaching with teachers. Curriculum leaders worked last year with their departments to think about plans for this current year, the 2022-23 school year, where there might have been some gaps in terms of the DLCS standards, where they could, again, integrate and or extend kids' learning through technology and the DLCS standards. And math and science teachers also offered coding options for students during the month of code, although I think over 200 students completed a coding project, and some of these were optional for kids, and kids got really excited about them. So that was pretty neat to witness, and most of them were shared with me. It was hard to go through them all, but they were pretty neat. So that was exciting. This year, some of the highlights, we are launching an in-house committee. The intent was to do that last year, but with COVID restrictions, we just didn't do that. So the in-house committee will be teacher-led, teacher-directed, and the hope is that teachers who are interested in pushing forward this work in our school will set a goal or maybe 2 goals that they will work on. And these meetings will happen after school on Mondays, once a month, so they're already scheduled. This committee is launching this month, and they will set some goals. So we're pretty excited about that. We are offering some new after-school clubs this year, connected to the DLCS standards, virtual reality club, podcast club for a couple, and we are offering more coding opportunities to students. We recognize that there's a need for that, and we're able to provide some other options for them, both during the year, during the school day, and after. And curriculum leaders are still working with their departments to plan for further implementation of the DLCS standards. The DLCS Toolbox website, which the elementary schools referenced, was launched today with our faculty, and they were pretty excited. Our tech integration specialist was able to provide some context for the actual toolbox, and we gave staff 15 minutes just to sort of dive in and ask some questions, and several of them were excited, and some of them are looking forward to the November 8th Professional Development Day, where they will be able to do some more work there. So that was great. It was nice to see the excitement today at 3:45. People were pretty excited, so that was great. And then just a few pictures. One of the things that strikes me as I get into classrooms is how technology is being used. All students have a Chromebook, which we know, but the different ways that kids are using the Chromebooks, how they're collaborating with them, doing a lot of different things is pretty remarkable. So this is just kind of a snapshot, but you know, there's an art classroom here in this middle photo where kids were, they were analyzing some art, and they were trying to create some art of their own, and just watching them talk together and message each other, it was pretty neat. This is a science classroom, an ELA classroom, a tech engineering classroom. This is a literature classroom where kids were doing a variety of analyzing, both in the actual book, the hard book, and then also online they were doing some work. So that was pretty neat to watch as well. And then this is just the month of code from last year and some of the things that all the schools did, but we are looking forward to that again this year. And as I said, based on some of the feedback we got from the students last year, we are providing them with some additional opportunities for coding. Some students who really are interested in it and have a knack for it, so we want to try to capitalize on that. Our second goal is around ensuring consistent implementation of high-quality instruction. What does that look like? What does it sound like? And so we started this work last year, just really working with teachers around, like, how do I know when I walk in this is high-quality instruction, or as an educator, how do I know what I'm trying to do here is high-quality instruction? So we began those conversations last year. We started doing some teachers observing other teachers last year, and we are continuing that this year. So just some of the highlights from last year under the progress. Our ELA coordinator, Meg Kelty, and our math coordinator, Mary Coakley, visited classrooms with administrators, and we were able to have professional conversations afterwards about what we saw, what student engagement looked like, were there choices that kids were given, were all kids being challenged, were all kids' needs being met, conversations like that, which are just wonderful to have in a completely non-evaluative way, where we are just kind of talking about what we are seeing and hearing and what the kids are doing. Last year we did administer dibbles to all of our kids, grades 6, 7, and 8. We have had a literacy intervention team for a few years, but with Megan Kelty's arrival, she was able to bring in a screener, which elementary schools have used for years, but we haven't really had a consistent screener to use with our students. And what we've noticed is that there are some gaps in kids' literacy skills that we need to address that have nothing to do with special education. And so we were able to use the data to form literacy intervention groups, some one-on-one interventions, some small groups, and progress monitor, and then we assess students at the end of the year as well. So it was just nice to really dig in, look at data, get our literacy interventionists really on board with using these kinds of tools and really utilizing data. So that was pretty exciting for us and new for us. Our leadership team and academic council did some work last year with the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. We watched some videos together, had some PD in our weekly meetings, and some teachers from these two groups really led this idea of giving students more choice in the classroom. And I think, you know, midway through last year, through the end of the year, there was a lot more options for kids around the work that they were engaging in. So that was pretty exciting to see. We're continuing that work this year. And about half of our staff last year actually attended the UDL Professional Development Day in March, which was really nice because we have sort of a foundation. About half of our teachers have that foundation to build from, so that was exciting. And then sort of upcoming, continuing to really work with curriculum leaders on focusing on instructional strategies, not just curriculum materials, but actual teaching strategies and best practices, and also using data to adjust their teaching. So that is a work in progress, but it is a targeted area for that group. We have several teachers who are part of the district's UDL Explorers group, and they continue to push forward with some UDL methodologies and ways of thinking in the classroom. And again, providing students with choice and options in the classroom has sort of been the focus so far. And it's exciting because getting into classrooms, it's not uncommon to see kids doing all kinds of different things, and that feels like we're moving in the right direction. We are hiring a math interventionist, Title I math interventionist, and we are hoping to use the model we are using for our literacy intervention program on a smaller scale to target math skills once we determine the kids who meet the criteria, and then we're going to work on that, hoping to have that up and running by the end of this month. And the administrators are continuing to work with the ELA and math coordinators to observe teaching and to analyze and discuss what we're seeing. And then these are just some photos, and again, it is exciting to get into classrooms and see kids doing all different things. This picture up here in the left, right here, those are 3 kids at a standing desk with a teacher. In that same classroom, there were 2 kids on the floor reading together and analyzing the same piece of writing that this group was. And then in another corner, there was one student reading her text and following along on a screen and listening to it. And just going into classrooms and seeing students have different options for how they receive information, who they work with, or if they prefer to work alone. And then sort of their output with kind of what they do with that information and how they demonstrate what they know. So it is nice to see students having some say in their learning and making some choices. This is just a science experiment down here, but just a lot of different ways that we are trying to give kids choices about their learning. Third goal is around equity of opportunity, and again, similar to the elementary schools, we are trying to foster culturally responsive and inclusive classroom communities and school environments that provide equal access to learning for all students. So we continue to work on understanding what truly culturally responsive teaching looks like, what environments look like, and we are working on pedagogy and methodologies and just trying to adjust practice based on what we are learning. So some highlights around our progress from last year. Our staff all had the ADL anti-bias training beginning of last year. And we also had some training from Safe Schools, specifically focused on trans youth. And it was really important for us to acknowledge that we had a lot of work to do there with understanding how to support our trans youth and how to support their families through middle school, which is particularly challenging for students, and just really learning about that. The kids always teach us a lot as well, but I think having this training for everybody gave us all sort of equal footing around how we were supporting our kids. And then our World of Difference peer leaders, we started this last year with our connection through the ADL. It was a pretty intensive 3-day training for our leaders, and our peer leaders were able to teach our 6th graders some work around team building and anti-bias. And it was really wonderful to see that. We run this program during the school day, so any student who wants to be in it can be in it. And a lot of the peer leaders that we had last year would not have been able to attend had it been an after-school program. So we were excited that we were able to do that and break down those barriers and really see some of these kids step up as leaders. So it was a really powerful experience for us. And then teachers and staff continue to replace some of the resources that they've used to make them more culturally responsive and to provide windows and mirrors, opportunities for kids to see both themselves and see others in the resources that they're using. It is neat when students are focusing on it as well, and you kind of walk around and say, oh, what are you reading? Well, I'm trying to find a book that is a mirror for me, and I'm also trying to find one that is more of a window for me, and saying, well, what do you mean by that? And the kids actually making conscious choices around that too. So I think we are all learning together, and that includes the kids, and just making some different choices about, for example, scientists we highlight, making sure that we highlight scientists that look like all kids in front of us is another example. Last year in June, our student council wanted to have a cultural fair, which they did. It was very successful. It was very much student-led and student-driven, and it was pretty amazing. I have a couple pictures that I'll share in just a second. We have more work to do, and this year, among other things, we are launching an in-house committee to focus on this as well, because we think it's important, just like all of our other things that we're trying to focus on. But we think it will be helpful to have, again, teachers who are interested in this to really focus on this, set 1, maybe 2 goals for the year. They will meet the same time as the other committee. Our peer leaders, World of Difference peer leaders, we're starting year 2, so we feel a little bit better about knowing kind of what to expect. We are accepting applications from students to be peer leaders, so that's exciting. Last I knew we had about 20, so that will launch pretty soon. And we're hoping, again, because we understand what to expect, what the training is like for our peer leaders, we are hoping to be able to have our 7th and 8th grade peer leaders actually teach 6th graders 3 or 4 times this year. So we're trying to expand a bit. And again, that will be during the school day. We think it's important to do that. And we continue to look at other resources to try to expand how we provide resources that show all the kids in front of us and from different backgrounds, different beliefs. And we have a plan to hold 2 family nights this year for our EL and FEL families to help them with technology, accessing PowerSchool and Canvas and all that. Sometimes it can be challenging, as well as other resources. And then these are just a few photos. I know last year I had a lot of what the kids have written about, have you ever felt like an outsider? And these are just a couple that kids shared this year. There are others, and I think it's important that we listen to kids. So this one just says, yes, I felt like an outsider before. I've been called the N-word. Really took a toll on me because I think personally that's the worst word to ever be called. And then the other one, I felt like an outsider at certain points in my life. During elementary school and middle school, I felt that way because I wasn't considered cool enough. Seeing everybody with their expensive shoes and expensive clothes made me feel like I wasn't worthy, not the most stylish person in the world. In return, I was made fun of because of what I was wearing. And ever since then, I felt a sense of vulnerability when I walk by people who may have more expensive items. And I think, all kids have a voice, and I think it's important for us to listen to them. The kids who chose to apply for this were willing to share their stories, and their name is on it. It's not that it's anonymous, and I think these are kids who want to make a difference. So hearing their stories and understanding sort of why they want to make a difference, I think is really important, and middle school is a critical time for that. When we send them off to high school, we want them to think for themselves and be able to stand up for themselves and for others. So the 2 advisors, Gretchen Bean and Lonnie Soder, who led this group, are leading again. So they're really excited about empowering a new group. I think we have, in terms of the applications, I think about 5 students who are returning, 8th graders, and then I think the other 15 so far are 7th graders. So some of them applied because they loved it when the 7th and 8th graders taught them last year. So it seems to be gaining some traction, and again, I think kids can make the most difference for other kids and for our future, so it's exciting. This is just a picture of our Model UN group that we have, windows and mirrors, and then down here, these are just a couple slides from our cultural fair, and all students were given an opportunity to go through the fair. All students were invited to participate, and we had probably about 15 students who actually had a booth. And then we had a handful of staff members who actually also had a booth, and then some classes had done some different things, but all students got to go through, and it was, they were asking peers questions, and sometimes these were students who don't speak much during the year, but they were excited to share something about their heritage or their family. So it was a really wonderful experience. And then these 2 photos are just from our LGBTQ plus group. Middle schools don't always have these offerings for kids, but we have had a pretty active one for several years, and it's important, and our students appreciate it, and they teach us a lot, and they are a presence just like any other club, and it's wonderful to see. Our 4th goal is around healthy and balanced learners. Again, similar to the elementary schools, we're talking about systematic approach to social and emotional learning, which is extremely important. Some progress from last year. The CASTLE framework was introduced to staff in October. Jennifer Lipton introduced that framework to our staff. Teachers incorporated a lot of strategies that they learned as they dug in a little bit into their classrooms on a regular basis. We added some new clubs to connect with students in different ways, and guidance counselors targeted SEL skills connected to the CASTLE framework in classrooms and shared the work they were doing with other teachers. And last year we added a standalone health class. Prior to last year, health was taught as part of our phys ed curriculum, but we have a health teacher now, and every student gets health class 1 day a week for the 3 years that they're here, so that was nice. And coming up this year, one of the things we're going to do is launch a committee to focus on this area as well. And teachers in all disciplines continue to try to incorporate SEL strategies into their classes. We started something this year with a new class. It's called SELF, Social Emotional Learning Foundations, and it is a 6th grade course that our 6th grade guidance counselor asked if she could teach this year. So she is targeting the skills in the CASTLE frameworks. Keith?
Michelle?
What should I do, escape out?
Yeah, I think so.
Go into pairing again?
Yeah, try it. See if it's there.
Oh, there it is, sorry.
Voila.
It kind of startled me. See, I could have done that without you, Keith.
No, I did.
See how I did?
Just did a little magic right there.
All right, anyway, so our Social Emotional Learning Foundations course so far has been a success, and one student described to his mother, I like that class because it just teaches us to be better people. And I think that the kids are getting, they understand it. They're working on understanding their brain and how their brain functions and how their body feels when they feel stressed. They're trying to understand how to, as he says, be better people. So it is going well so far. And our health and self and PE teachers continue to collaborate to support kids' social, emotional, and physical well-being. And these are just a few photos. There's the castle wheel again, which again the elementary folks shared. There's our therapy dog with a student. We have still a high number of students that subscribe to our band program as well as our chorus program, which is wonderful. We know that it helps students with learning, keeps well-rounded learners. This is a class, one of our self classes was actually outside. They were doing some journaling, field hockey, tryouts down here. We kept everybody, which was really nice. We didn't have to make any cuts, which is exciting. And there's some phys ed activities. And then this is just a poster of the brain and some of its functions that the self teacher is actually using to help kids kind of understand what's happening with their brains. And then these are the Castle competencies, and it's interesting because kids will say, I really need to work on my social awareness, I think, or they are using the terminology, well, I'm having a hard time with self-management. So it's nice to get the kids talking about themselves that way, and the plan is for the guidance counselor to be also working with the rest of the teachers so that we're all using the same language and we can help kids. And then finally, our last goal is around increasing curriculum leaders and team leaders' capacity to improve teaching and learning. So we have team leaders in our building, and we also have curriculum leaders. And I think we saw a real need to empower them and help them be teacher leaders. So we started this work last year. There's more to do, but we continue to kind of review the roles, so that there is going to be some overlap, and sometimes those two groups meet together, but we are trying to sort of separate who's doing what. So last year, both team leaders and curriculum leaders did spend some time focusing on UDL, and they experimented with choice in the classroom. Our team leaders added some before and after school clubs to try to continue forming meaningful connections with kids outside of the classroom. And then this year, some of our teachers are, as I mentioned earlier, UDL explorers, so that's a nice way for them to lead. And many of those folks are not curriculum leaders, nor are they team leaders. So it's nice to have another way for folks to lead. And then this year we specified certain parts of our school improvement plan that we would like curriculum leaders to focus on, and then certain parts that team leaders would like to focus on. So we think that is going to help. And then, one of the things that I think the pandemic did was it did sort of help teachers feel like they could step up and make some choices. I think we needed them to, and they did. So an example is, this is a schedule for our half day that we had last week for our open house. And in the past, at meetings, team leaders would have said, what should we do for our schedule for the half day? And I would say, what do you want to do? And I think that was hard for them. They wanted me to tell them, but now they know. As team leaders, you decide what you want that schedule to look like, and they just do it now. So that's nice. And I think that they are feeling empowered, like they can make decisions. This is just a picture of the welcome walk, the first day back for all kids. And this was something team leaders wanted to do. They just did it. And then these are just pictures of staff working together. Here's a picture of a teacher leading others around the DLCS toolbox. And then high quality instructional practices from the district. Our curriculum leaders are using this as a way to talk about teaching and instruction and how it looks in the classroom. And that is my last slide.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, never for loss of words. Thank you, Michelle. I think it was a great presentation. It gets me excited. I wish I was back into the classroom and doing some of these things. I had a question under goal number 2, and that was the math intervention sessions. And I think it's a very valuable thing, especially coming after the 2 years of, maybe a year and a half of remote learning and hybrid learning and all that. When do those sessions take place? Are those before school, after school, or are they within the school day? And how do you get those in and still keeping up with the time and learning?
During the school day. So the way we do literacy intervention is if students have a flex block, they can have an intervention time then. Sometimes students will come in a little bit before school and it can go kind of into the homeroom time. So there are times in our schedule where kids have a little bit of flexibility that we can do those. So we are hoping for 2 30-minute sessions for students during a week to really target skills and then reassess and see if they need more intervention, and if they don't, then we would exit them. So we're really, our math intervention model is really in its infancy. We, like I said, we are hoping to model it after what we were doing for literacy, but we do have some time in our schedule that we can do that.
And I'm glad to see that it's vibrant, that the kids can be coming in and out as they need the skills, and then they have the remediation, and then they have the mastery of it, so that's wonderful. On the UDL, do you still do those lessons where you put them online so other teachers can see them? Or
what do you mean?
Did they understanding by design? I know there was a format that we used to do those lessons, but we used to upload them and put them online so other teachers could see that. Is that still going on with UDL or no?
So that would be Atlas, which is our curriculum mapping software.
Oh, okay.
So we still have Atlas. It has taken a bit of a back seat in the pandemic. But we continue to use backward mapping for curriculum. But UDL is a really different from our curriculum mapping process.
It is, okay. And then my last question was that under goal 3, I was so pleased to see that you're giving those students who may not be too vocal, but they can do it through their writing skills, and you're giving them a voice and empowering them, and you're able to share their feelings with you. Some of those things you may never even come across. So it was hard. It was a little heartbreaking to read some of those things that are still happening, but I'm sure that you will turn that around with a positive. And the last one was, you mentioned under goal 3 you have a model UN. Is that under the same type of auspices as the model UN at the high school level? And do those kids go to a state level then on the weekend?
We do have an opportunity for them to do that. Obviously during the pandemic we were not able to, but yes, we generally do send them into Boston for the model UN there. There's a middle school version, and then there's the high school version. So yes, and a lot of those kids go on to the high school and join that model UN club there. Before the pandemic, we had some of the high school students who were involved come down and talk to the middle school kids, so that was a really nice collaboration, which we hope to continue.
How many years have you been doing the model UN here at the middle school?
Maybe 20. I mean, it's been a long time. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. And it's great to see the high school kids coming down and collaborating and sharing their experiences also. Hats off to everybody doing it, and especially your school council members. You have a good group there, even, several teachers and several community members. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just have one quick question and then a comment that's kind of for everybody. So I'm just curious, in the DLCS program, is there any engagement with media literacy in the context of the digital literacy and computer science skill sets that are being given to the students? Are they, and you mentioned copyright, like are there any pieces of that curriculum that are instructing students how to engage with information in the digital sphere?
So are you thinking about them getting information, or are you thinking about more about like social media, or both? Or
all of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are kids engaging with information that's coming at them in the digital sphere? Is it contextually something that would fold into the DLCS program?
Mm-hmm.
We have so many different ways to obtain information now, especially as we, just open access to younger and younger children.
Yeah.
How how are any kind of vetting of information coming through digital platforms being instructed to students?
So we have ways that we can sort of manage what they can access and what they can't access when they're at school, certainly. But I think we are explicitly teaching them about resources and whether they're valid resources or not valid resources. Certainly we're doing some of that work. We do talk about the public domain and what that means. We talk about plagiarizing and all that kind of stuff. But additionally, when you talk about your digital footprint and what you are doing on, social media, that inevitably spills into school. They're not supposed to be on that in school, but, occasionally they are. And also sometimes what happens in the digital realm does come into school in terms of could be bullying, could be anything, could be these photos that they're snapping to each other and then they disappear. So we see a whole lot of overlap, and some of the teaching we are doing is a result of something that happens. We are also teaching them about being safe online. The assistant DA's office is going to be doing some work with the middle school in the next month or so. So we're doing some of the internet safety stuff that we've done in the past. And that is just constantly evolving and really trying to help them understand what they're doing. And I think, some of what's coming through to them, they take at face value, and it's our job to really help them kind of understand how you get information. So, yes.
Okay, so it's in there. It's just, I wonder if there's maybe more opportunities for kind of explicit.
Can I just add to that too? So
Yeah.
I think that our library folks play an instrumental role in thinking about sources, source credibility, and I think the partnership between our librarians and our instructional technology specialists, specifically at the middle school, is strong. So the library media specialist also is responsible for teaching DLCS standards.
Okay.
But I also think when we think about, site and source credibility, it also permeates all content areas of history, English, and really teaching kids how to be critical thinkers.
Right.
And really question the sources and the validity of information.
Right.
And I just want to add, at the elementary level too, this is the first year in several years where we've added instructional technology specialists. So we've had the librarians in each elementary school. The addition of that instructional technology specialist has really helped partner with our librarians around this work, and we're really excited about moving that forward.
Thank you. And just a comment, just to all of the leaders here of the schools, kind of explicitly speaking of, it's enveloped in all the goals, but goal 3, hearing a lot of, we have a lot of work to do kind of messaging, and I guess I just want to reflect back to you all that it's really nice to hear that framed through, an approach rooted in humility, and that we all kind of only know what we know, and to be open to the experiences of others, and to not hear words like competency thrown around as if it's something that can be tested out of, but a real sense of kind of humility and learning how to create these very inclusive and open spaces for all of our students and families. So I just wanted to make that comment and say thank you.
So the only thing I would add is just thanking Michelle and Jennifer Callahan for their leadership. And one highlight that I think is did not resonate in the school improvement plan is Michelle's work partnering with the high school, Algonquin Regional High School, and Principal Bevan. I think it's one of the strongest partnerships that existed in my tenure, and that's a testament to Michelle and her collaboration with Principal Bevan, with the goal of making sure that our students are prepared to be successful at Algonquin. I think Algonquin has learned from Pelican, and Pelican has learned from Algonquin, and I think that's just a testament to Michelle Carb's willingness to partner and see where students are headed.
That's great. I think it's both ways too. I mean, that's great for him to also want to partner with you guys and know that, it's coming,
It has been a real collaboration. It's been wonderful working with Sean. It's also been wonderful working with Gary at Trotter. It was with you too, Keith.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if we don't have anything with any of the teachers, I'm comfortable with staying tonight.
I think so.
Thank you all so much for coming
Thank you.
tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to school safety.
Yes, so school safety, so I think that we continue to make sure we're prepared and ready in terms of all sorts of different types of situations that can happen in our schools. A couple weeks ago, we did hold a school readiness and preparedness meeting that included Principal Carr, folks in Southborough, as well as folks from Algonquin High School. And really, we talked about what are the expectations in terms of the types of preparedness and experiences we want to provide students. We mapped out a calendar and we actually communicated the expectations to our Northborough, Algonquin, Southborough administrative team. We also are working very closely with our Northborough Police Department with Chief Liver's leadership. We have a meeting with Chief Liver in the next couple of weeks to continue to think about how we can partner, ensure that they're part of school readiness preparedness drills that we're going to be running, and also think about, from their perspective, how we can improve and enhance security in our buildings. I will share that we are keeping a close eye on money that we're expecting to have an opportunity to write a grant around. The Baker-Polito administration provided a supplemental bill totaling a little over $40 million for the sole purpose of providing support to schools for critical school safety initiatives. So Keith has his ear to the ground and is watching carefully. We think we will have an opportunity to increase our communications and security of our infrastructure, cameras, access cards, and communications. And we're also expecting that there will be some money for additional training and response training, and also safety measures for multi-hazard emergency planning. I will share that we have a pretty robust protocol in our district. And as a leadership team, we continue to think about, if this scenario happens, how would we react, how would we respond? And I think the work never ends and will continue as we move forward.
School calendar.
So in your packet, I've included a draft calendars for the 23-24 school year. At the September 21st combined open meeting, I presented 3 draft calendars to all of the committees for consideration. Draft A calendar was no change from past practice in terms of keeping the religious holidays, the 2 Jewish holidays, and Good Friday, and having 2 professional development days on election days. Draft B calendar was a change of practice, and that is no religious holidays, so removing the 2 Jewish holidays and Good Friday, and continuing to have 2 professional development days on election days. And then the draft C calendar was no religious holidays and elections out of school, so we could identify the most opportune time to place our professional development days. So since we met in the combined open meeting, I have signaled to the community that we are engaging in this conversation. I have a draft calendar survey that I will be sharing with the community in the next few weeks. I've also spoken with the town leadership of Northborough to think about what it would mean to not have elections in our schools and what other opportunities that would exist. I think it would be powerful for the school committee to draft a letter to the select board, also to communicate an interest in having the town explore that opportunity. I think it's also important to note that over the past couple years, as a district, we created a religious observance policy that clearly provides opportunities for folks of all faith, a mechanism to ensure that they feel comfortable observing their religious practices, and if that means not attending school, that there are language and protocols and procedures that all educators need to follow and practice, so students are not penalized for missing education for religious observance. I think it's far more than just a calendar conversation. It's, I think, Bryce, as you said it so eloquently at the meeting, it's really about who we are as a district and how do we value the variety of, the diversity of folks who live in our community.
So for the, I was actually gonna ask that about the Board of Selectmen. Should we request for them to have it be an agenda topic type thing, like a letter to say we'd love to open discussion?
I think a letter stating the interest of
Opening discussion, if they want us to come,
Exactly.
gladly come.
investigating what options exist.
And my guess is community action, that maybe there's another letter too, but I think one from us just saying we need to engage in solving that problem
Mhm.
sooner than later is a good idea.
Yeah.
When do we vote the calendar in?
So there is school committee policy that states that the calendar needs to be voted by May. So in past practice, we voted, I think the earliest we voted for the student calendar is December.
Yeah.
I
I think we typically do December, just so then if there's changes, we can make them, but also just to get it kind of like ahead of families and stuff.
I think in other years, we've held a special meeting in January. So I think that it's really the will of the combined.
Person making the request to them, and we could just back up with some of the information that we have.
Yeah. And I know, they're aware of the situation. You've made them aware, Mitch has been around, and he's knows it and stuff, so we'll get there. All right.
Oh, one last question.
Yeah.
Greg, when do you expect how can we get a larger percentage back on it? Going through my notes, it was a survey from December, you got the results December of 2021, and there were only 389 responses. How can we get more of a response back? Is there anything we can do as school committee members, show up and something and pass out more papers to people?
Yeah, and I think my intention is to kind of map out a variety of methods to get input to do that. I think that a survey is one way, but I think also, holding some listening sessions with the chairs of each school committee that would be really important. I think just seeking a variety of ways. Your attendance at the open houses was really a great opportunity for people to engage in the conversation with you folks. So I think the survey is one mechanism, and we'll try to communicate that opportunity out. But when I do communicate the opportunities for feedback, I want to make sure that they're broad in nature and they meet different folks' needs. So that will happen in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and I did want to also mention that at our September 7th meeting, we did have 2 parents that came at the audience hearing in the beginning and gave their viewpoint. So whenever we can hear from our constituents, it's most helpful. Even 2 is better than 0. So I appreciate those 2 parents coming and giving us their perspective.
Old business, the liaison list is in our packet. I don't think there's anything else we need to really address about that. Superintendent report to the committee, enrollment.
Sure. So in your package is the enrollment report as of September 21st, 2022. So we do have, as you can see, many of our elementary classrooms are capped in terms of the school committee's class size policy. We continue to receive students who are interested in enrolling in our district. And I think, in terms of the budget process has begun for fiscal year 24, and it's something we're keeping a close eye on in terms of potentially adding additional staffing to support adhering to our class size policy. I'll also note that October 1st was an important date. That is the date in which we have to close our enrollment and submit to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. That basically dictates funding for Chapter 70, so that as the period is closed, Lorraine Wolfring has done a great job at the central office preparing that data and submitting to the state. And again, we're monitoring enrollment very closely.
We lost 50 in September?
So
So we had like, what, 85, like right before that, right?
The enrollment report that was run was August 30th, 2022. We principals withdraw students as of October 31st, 2022, the first day of school. So, and the reason why we do that is so students who may have withdrawn, who said that they have withdrawn, they actually show up at our door on August 31st. So from August 30th to the June enrollment report, there was a difference of 80 students. From August 31st to that June enrollment report, there's actually a delta of 36 more students enrolled in our district.
Right, so of the 80.
So it's hard, what we're trying to use our student information system to determine is how many students unenrolled.
Yeah, and unenrolled, and why? Like, did they go private or did they move out of district? Is what
Yeah, I mean,
I'm curious.
we saw primarily at the middle school level, just where we saw the majority of students withdrawn.
Still residents of Northborough, but withdrawn?
Potentially, yeah. Not at a, if you look at historic withdrawal patterns of 8th grade, Algonquin, we still had a high number of students from 8th grade and Algonquin Regional High School. But it's something we're looking into the why.
Yeah.
So also in your report is the FY23 monthly general fund expenditure report, and turn it over to Becky Pellegrino.
Okay, so over the past month, the finance team has been going through the FY23 budget, and we've been encumbering as many of the known expenses as we possibly can. As a result, we have $337,424, or 1.26% remaining on the bottom line as of September 30th. In comparing to where we were last year, we were just under 675,000 or 2.62% remaining. There are a few areas of watch right now that we are keeping a close eye on. The first is the teacher salary line item, and again, that is because of those 2 new additional classrooms that were added. We've conservatively budgeted for electricity. Our electric contract is up in December, and if you have read the paper or seen the news over the past week or so, you do know that electricity is expected to increase. So we are being conservative in our projections, and we are working with a consultant who will help us through that contract process. The other area that we're closely watching is special education transportation. We did experience a rate increase this year, and we've also seen a few more students who have been added to transportation. And I know that Marie and the Student Support Services team is doing an analysis right now just to look at those costs and make sure that we are as close to accurate as we possibly can be. And then lastly, I did want to explain the teaching special education line. You will see that that line is over budget. However, there is an offset in our psychological services line item, and that's because over the summer we did some reconfiguration in our staffing. And so we do have staff that have been moved from one line item to the other. So there is an offset there, so it's not a true overage in that line item. We are watching the budget very closely, as you can imagine, and we're looking to all of our available grants as well for additional funding.
Do we have a motion?
Excuse me, I move that we accept until audited the FY 2023 budget monthly general fund expenditure report as of September 30th, 2022.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? Questions? All in favor? Unanimous?
Thanks for your job.
Thank you.
So next in your packet is, actually not in your packet, capital projects and improvements. So just an update. So Keith has been working very closely with Bud Richardson on developing the upcoming capital plan. So Cheryl will be reaching out to schedule a capital plan subcommittee meeting so we can review that document in detail. Keith and Bud have done a great job with a lot of great detail and backup data this year that has not been available and provided in the past. So we'll review that at the subcommittee meeting that Cheryl is in the process of scheduling. Comments?
No, I do appreciate what Bud has done. I mean, he came into this position during the pandemic and has had an opportunity in the last few months really to do a deeper review of the different buildings and look at them literally from the roof to the ground and around to make some good recommendations for it. So, there's a lot to touch base on. We're looking forward to the opportunity to explain.
Thank you.
Just also on that item, capital projects and improvements, also we have not heard from MSBA around the Proctor Road, so I think we are anticipating that by the end of this month we should have an answer. And it continues to be a high priority for a project. I know that the Board of Selectmen is meeting this evening to talk about ARPA funding, and I believe that you, as a committee, have clearly articulated that as a high priority. And the pathway will vary depending on whether we are invited as a community into MSBA or not. Mm-hmm. Regardless, the project needs to be done and completed after we is invited.
Given a green light, when would you do the work?
So it's we have to follow MSBA's process and timeline.
What if it's without MSBA?
We'd be able to move much faster. We would have to obviously follow procurement.
But procurement would lead us probably to summer of '23?
It's a fair estimate.
Okay. Okay, and MSBA's timeline is
It is
another
MSBA's.
topic altogether.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
So also in your packet is the result of last week's special meeting to discuss budget goals. So I think it was a very fruitful conversation and created opportunity to have great dialogue and discourse around budget priorities. I think I would just summarize and characterize as the meeting as an opportunity to really get more specific around, we have these budget priorities that are aligned to the strategic plan, but are very broad, and there's an opportunity to engage in dialogue around what are the specific things the committee is interested in looking to move forward with in this year's FY24 budget.
So I would like, if the committee's on board, this to kind of table our discussion until maybe Lauren and Aaron can be present. So maybe we'll kind of digest this, the changes we've made, potentially schedule another special subcommittee meeting. If you think that's warranted before the November meeting. I don't know if that information that, with the information from staffing, things like that, if that would be in before November. If it's not, then maybe we just talk about it at our November meeting. I know you guys get a lot of information and you start crunching numbers and things like that.
I think what we need in terms of the budget process is a direction.
Okay.
And I think even if they shift a little bit from future conversations, we'll be able to put a dollar amount to those and add that to our preliminary budget to see what the impacts are.
So
in terms of what it's going to be initiatives for.
So is this draft enough for you to kind of give preliminary, or do we need like an approval type thing to go?
I think we can wait until the next meeting.
Okay. Yes, John.
I just have two edits, okay? In the first section, where it says, the first bullet, the second and the third word just need to be transposed. Create a math. And then the third section, meet the needs of all learners with instructional classroom models. It seems the last two words, that are, don't lead in properly to the words purchase and support. And that, the last two words, I don't know if it is meet the needs of all learners with instructional classroom models by, then we'd have to put purchase. We'd have to change the tense from purchase to purchasing. I don't know if that sounds right. It's just the wording on that are, that take a look at that.
So wordsmithing basically.
Yeah. But that was good work doing that, through a Zoom meeting. Appreciate that.
I think the only other thing is I thought about after reading it was, and again, we're going to table until we're all present and stuff, but meeting the needs of all learners with instructional classroom models. But meeting the needs of all learners, it seems like we always do a lot of focus on getting all the kids up to the benchmark, up to the thing. But I'm concerned about, especially when you hear about people leaving middle school, things like that, are we losing people because they're going private? Because they're, like, we're not challenging some of the learners, not enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, do we not have
There's probably a both and
enough, yeah.
there, not a but yeah, but yeah, my
That
guess
would just be
is,
something for people.
I think you would hear folks in our community who might reflect a similar sentiment.
Yeah, so something just to keep in the back of our minds when we're continuing with the parts of it. So.
Can I ask that if we have future meetings that occur during kind of business hours, is there an opportunity to submit prior to that thoughts and ideas that could get discussed during the meeting?
If you can't be present?
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
rarely ever am I going to be able to attend something that happens before 5 o'clock. So is
We
that
can-
okay? Like, can I just submit?
We could schedule the meeting.
And we can schedule it.
No. I mean, you got to schedule the meetings to fit in with all of the other meetings, but can I then submit?
100%.
Okay, awesome.
Definitely.
Yep.
And Kelly, would you just let me know how you want me to do
Yep,
that? Okay.
however, yeah, whatever you're comfortable with, if you want to shoot in.
Maybe it's just a
Word
CC
doc
for
CC,
both you and
yep.
Greg, and, okay,
Yep.
okay, great, thank you.
But yeah, I know this meeting, we kind of wanted to get it in just before this, to the planning, but I think going forward too, especially if there's multiple, all, if not, 3 or more, maybe do the doodle polls just so we can then have. But yeah, we used to do them sometimes at like 6:30 at night.
Yeah, I'm not against you having to fit them in when you fit them in, just
Yeah.
want to know how I can get
Yeah,
them.
definitely. All right.
So also in your packet is the FY24 budget calendar, so as we move forward with the budget process, the calendar will be updated. And I just want to also acknowledge that the finance team under Becky's leadership has launched the FY24 budget process.
Of course that.
All of the principals have their tasks and assignments, and those are due back on the end of this month, which would then be the catalyst to create our first preliminary budget. So in your packet is a distribution of the personnel report. I just want to comment that all of our professional status educators are hired. So in the areas where we continue to be challenged hiring our educator support professionals. But overall, I think it's gone very well this hiring season, given the context of what others are experiencing. So I think, Marie, I think we have one, we talked this morning, one
long-term sub for
It's a
BCBA.
long-term sub BCBA that we have to fill, one currently.
Is that pipeline of teacher assistants only getting more and more challenging to fill? Like, is there, I'm just trying to think of hearing stories about how challenging it can get to grow an educational staff from within. Is that just kind of like, that's true across the board regardless of where you're geographically, or?
Yeah, I think we're seeing less people applying for those positions.
Yeah.
So really the question that we're asking is how do we differentiate ourselves from our surrounding communities?
Yeah.
And one area we're looking at is how can we create opportunities for ESPs to join us as a district.
Right.
We don't have a pathway
Yeah.
to become licensed educators.
Nice.
So Heather Richard is working on partnerships with local colleges and universities so that when we're recruiting, we can say this is a great place to start
That's great.
and an opportunity to grow and learn
Yeah.
and advance your career.
Yeah. Great.
And we have a couple paras who are taking advantage of that already
Nice.
in our system, so we're excited about that.
I'm noticing I jumped the personnel. I don't know why, I feel like personnel should always go around the report. I don't know, maybe we need to reorder that. Maybe it's just my brain. I don't know. But jumping back to E, since we jumped to G, the school committee member reports. Do you want to talk about the Northborough?
Sure, so I can share some of the thinking around timelines and next steps. So I think that my thinking is convening, actually seeking additional members to the study group. I think it's important that we had a great team, and I think adding more voices and more opportunities to participate is really important. My goal is to hold a first meeting by the end of this month, in first week in November, to really think about how do we take the information that we've collected and the research we've done and then communicate that out and provide opportunity for the community to engage in discourse and dialogue around that topic. So I think convening late October, early November, soliciting input and feedback around what are the options, what are the advantages and disadvantages, and educating folks around the options would be November, December, January, and then really trying to synthesize all of that information and feedback and present it back to the school committee. Here's what we heard, here's our recommendation moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Kristen spoke here showing interest that she'd like it, and I've also been approached by a preschool parent, which I think would be a great idea because that's really the kids that we're looking at. It's going to be that that age that's going to be the most impacted with changes, if changes are made.
Would this be a meeting that folks would need to sign up for, or that you would post and the community members could approach as an open meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my first thinking is convening this
Sure.
study group. I'm sure many of the members who participated are going to want to come back.
Yeah.
And then with that group, doing an initial planning session. And like, okay, here's where we ended last year, here's the information we had, and what is our goal this year? And for me, I think the goal is to really engage folks in the options and the pros and cons of each option. I will share that it does align also with some of the work we need to do with MSBA around submitting a statement of interest for Peasley School, because there are a lot of options that, we talked about partner schools, but there are also other options in terms of,
You can create one new big school.
I think everything needs to be on the table in
Yeah,
terms
lots of options, yeah.
of, it could be a renovation of Peasley, but it could be a consolidation of schools. It
Mhm.
could be, so
Yeah.
I think it all fits in, and, I think more conversation and discussion and dialogue is important. I think we have some really good information when we dig into that.
Sorry.
Well, I was just saying, so the Peasley renovation, so we have the statement, and it's like a 5-year process, right? So what is the rough idea that we would get, the kids would get back into the Peasley or the new Peasley, whatever? When would that, I'm just trying to get like a ballpark, like figure. We're in what, 2022 right now? So are we thinking 2025, or are we thinking more like 2028?
So I think what we're,
A long.
when you are invited into the eligibility phase,
Mhm.
A minimum of 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
The 60 year being occupying whatever project we move forward. So it's that 27, 28 timeframe.
But I do think that speaks to your line of thought before, which is like, we can get creative outside of just sister schools and neighborhood schools.
Mhm.
Like, it's for the community to see opportunity
Mhm.
instead of challenge,
Mhm.
in a way that I think you're talking about framing it as, which I love. So, that's great.
Hey, Greg, picking up on what Kelly said about getting the preschool parents, having that contact is so good. I know that they're probably not getting your superintendent's memo, but maybe taking a portion of that and putting it in the community advocate with, an email link or something like that. Because I think, as Kelly said, that is an important population. They're going to be affected by it.
Well, especially looking at, these are the years
I would
that.
say maybe more like the library, or like, I don't
Yeah.
know, too many young parents who are a community advocate.
They
I
might
think,
not be
but-
reading things now, but maybe the QR codes.
Yeah.
Maybe we can have the elementary schools and the middle schools
Yeah.
come up with let's ask them and
Yeah.
have them come up with the ways that we should get information across.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier about how do we get the input from families, and let's ask the
true.
kids. Let's go back and say, hey.
Utilize their talents. what they're
Utilize
doing.
their talents, be like, hey, how do you talk to your parents, and how can we talk to your parents? So, I think these are all great ideas. Any other reports do you want to share?
I have nothing.
Educational policy, there's none at this time. Policy development, nothing to distribute, nothing at this time. Personnel, we've already accomplished. Communications, we're good. Just going right through people. I would like to entertain any motions for any minutes on the table.
I move to accept the open meeting minutes of September 7th, 2022, as stated, printed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay.
I move to accept and retain the executive session minutes of September 7th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Kelly, can I just go back to G, policy development?
Yep.
Greg, attached to the calendar, you also had the religious observance
Yeah.
policy I-340. I'm not on the policy committee, but I would recommend that they take a look at that again, especially if we're going to be looking at the calendar.
What does it say there? Because I feel
June
like,
20th, 2018.
I feel like it was done more recently than that.
It's been
Or maybe it was the,
pre-pandemic, like everything. has
I
Yeah,
guess,
that's
yeah,
the time,
because
yeah.
I remember working on it, and I was like, I guess that was pre-pandemic.
I mean,
I think it will be,
coming.
especially with the calendar
Right.
being updated, yeah. I don't know where it falls under, I know Cheryl keeps a good log of where things, get cycled, so they reevaluate, but I do think that's a good point to keep on the thought, is if we are redoing the
And
policy.
it could be a review of the policy.
Just
I
a
think when
review.
you review the policy, it provides an opportunity for the community also to get
Input.
feedback,
Mhm.
input on the policy, so I think it's a maybe time.
Mhm, okay.
All right. So future agenda items, student support services. We've asked for some overviews, also for teaching, learning, presentations. Joan would like to add in social studies in with that.
Mhm.
And then the NESDEC enrollments projections, preliminary budget discussions, and then we'll have to do approval of goals. We'll kind of go in with that one.
And then going on the teaching and learning presentations, maybe Kelly, you and Greg could work on schedules as we do with the region. So, because that's a lot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, so we're not
So-
gonna get to it all. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, is there was something that we were talking about, and I said, I think I was saying to you about how depending on how the budget discussion went, if there was areas that we wanted more information on, I think that's what we were kind of thinking, like, if our goals, there was certain things that came up within the goals.
Mhm.
Like, for example, like, I'm not gonna say the social emotional,
No, that's
you know what I
true,
mean? So
that's
if
true.
that was something that was driving us,
Mhm.
then that would, I feel like would be something we wanted to hear about more
Perfect,
sooner
yeah.
than later. I know the music is probably,
Mhm.
because our budget goals, going with the string program, so, maybe that's one of the earlier
It's a priority.
priorities of hearing a report from like those.
Yeah, I think music and if health education stand in terms of hiring health educators.
Yeah.
I think doing something roughly
Yeah.
topics would be really important.
Yeah, and then the second thing that Greg and I discussed, part of that is reaching out to these departments also and asking them for their schedule input.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't want to assume and then put something too much on anybody's
Right,
plate.
yeah, definitely.
So I don't want them to be like, oh, no, we have to do it next month. And then the only other thing I don't see in here is the PTOs. Have we made a list of when we want PTOs to present yet?
No, so Cheryl and I were talking today that we have to get the principal's schedule.
Their
for
schedules.
attending
Okay.
the
So I think
upcoming
Alana
school
said she was
committee.
going to come next month or
So
something,
when they present the principal's report, they'll also, their PTOs will also
Mhm.
join. So I have to check in with them to make sure they communicate back to
Their PTOs. Okay.
So I will develop a
And-
two-year cycle of department presentations or content presentations.
Yeah.
And I'll start with music.
I think
and
music-
health as
Mhm.
a priority. We had ELA and that.
ELA.
last
We already had ELA and math kind of, yeah, so
Mhm.
I feel like at least get it going. And then
Right.
we want the social studies. I mean, we could then eventually follow through with all of
But
it.
like you say, something that is in our budget goals,
Mhm.
and that we may need more information on,
Yeah.
or just educating the public on it.
Yeah. And then, it's just, I lost it.
So the other potential agenda item is MCAS. We've been receiving
You
our
said that
MCAS
you received that.
results, so I think, we're in the process of analyzing, identifying what the next action steps are, so I think Dr. Reinhorn, either November, December, or January, present on that.
So, one last thought, and maybe not for the next one, but for future, is following up, because I heard it mentioned again today on the screening that.
SEL screening?
Yeah, that Dr. Lipton O'Connor
The CASL,
had brought to
yeah.
us last spring. I know that it was given in the spring, but we're still talking about its data, and I guess I was under the impression that that data was really relevant to a pretty small time frame, kind of a snapshot of about 30 days, and so I guess I'm wondering how that's affecting the decision we're making now, 5-6 months later.
So adding that as
At some point, I'd love to just kind of hear more.
I think
from
too
her.
also, the Metro West Health
Yeah,
data
all
that
of
we have,
them, yeah.
so they're all connected.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a lot of conversation around, what are the next steps in terms of the screener and what do with the data, what's the time look like, time frame look like.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think we just need more meetings.
Just a few more.
Oh.
Hey, if they're this short, I don't mind. No, just kidding. All right, so there was something in my brain, but when it comes back, I'll circle back to that. Approval of bills and payrolls, we're doing good. Doing good?
Yep.
Okay.
I promise I will.
Are we
also
doing good?
I will also be checking my email more frequently.
The
I got the
app
last
is, the
one
app
within a
is
day.
great, let me tell you, the app is great.
Yeah. Any audience sharing? Got a very crowded audience tonight. Any hands? No hands, okay. Thank you. So unless there's any further discussion on anything, we have an executive session. So we are going to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining. And due to my determination that the discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the positions of the committee with no, so we are not going to return to open meeting. So we will be adjourning open meeting and going into executive session.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so roll call, I think, do we have to adjourn?
Yes.
So, yes, Joan. Bryce, yes. Yes, myself. So thank you so much. The open session is adjourned at 8:27. Thank you.